So this song is about my father and me and my sons as the song progresses through the verses. This part of it is about him and his journey to America to establish a life here. Lucky for me that I got to be born in America thanks to his hard work. So this is about what he sacrificed and did for me so I could be here, and thereby my sons, down the road, and, me in the middle. And I'll discuss that later. But so this album and this song was produced by Matt Wallace, who also did Faith No More, Maroon 5, Deftones, a bunch of other artists that are really famous in Los Angeles and all over the world. And the drummer and bass player on this album are Mike Bordin and Bill Gould, respectively, of Faith No More. And I was very fortunate to have them, thanks to Matt, who was their producer for 4 albums and mixing engineer on their last album. But the story starts out in East Bengal, which was partitioned by the British and later called Bangladesh. And the British had this divide and conquer mentality like they did throughout history with their ships and imperialism and conquering the world. This little country as big as New Jersey conquering the world with a bunch of wooden boats. Kind of brilliant if you look at it. But they used religion, and they try to bring Christianity to India, some of which still remains in the South, in the names and the people and their beliefs down there. And in the Northwest, they partitioned that and gave it to Pakistan and said, okay, all the Muslims go there, or the other ones go to the Northeast, which is Bangladesh. But my dad's family also was not Muslim. They were Hindu. And so they came in the middle of the night and said, either you convert or you die. So they came with machetes and burned down my dad's grandfather's house. So in the middle of the night, they had to pick up all their things and their baby sister, who was, I guess, 7 at the time, and just flee like actual refugees. So they got to the train station and went west to West Bengal, which was known as Calcutta or Kolkata. Now, if you pronounce it correct in the modern day PC way and spell it. They went from train station to train station because they weren't allowed to be in the Muslim territory. So they ended up in West Bengal. And from there, my dad went to Germany. He was recruited to rebuild Germany after World War II. He was a civil structural engineer, really a genius. I've seen his books and the calculations he did by hand, the physics, the calculus when there were no calculators, let alone basically basic adding machines. And it's just mind-blowingly abstract. And so any intelligence I have or my sons have, I'm pretty sure they got it from him, because he was something else. It's sad to see him going down now so fast ever since he retired at age 70. But I'm watching it before my eyes. And so this song is an homage to him and his hard work, and thanking him for bringing the chance for me to be born in America. And after he rebuilt Germany and got his master's degrees, or one of them, in Germany, where I must say parenthetically, he told me a story. There's a scar on his stomach. I was on a plane to India with him. I was like 9 or 10 or something. I was like, what's that scar? And he's like, oh, I got stabbed by my roommate in Germany because I wasn't Muslim and he was Muslim. He's since forgotten that story and forgotten pretty much everything, but I'm here to present some of this so my sons can know where the lineage came from, and also their soccer playing, their looks, their swimming, their sprinting. Basically, a lot of who they are came from my dad and also my mom, but I'm not talking about her in this song. And then from there, he went to England to rebuild England after World War II. He was there for 8 years, I think, in East London at the time. He had a house, he showed me, it was like a brownstone, 18-foot wide, 3-story. And he had a blue car, I think it was an Aston something. Anyway, he brought his brother there. He paid for all their marriages and houses and cars and whatever they wanted, and same with my mom's family with the money he made overseas from India. And then he got another master's degree, I think, and then he was recruited to Buffalo around 1970 or 71, give or take, and he was there to build the NFL stadium that the Buffalo Bills still play in. And so when I see that team play now in their royal blue, I have to be like, oh, my dad designed that stadium. Interestingly, he never told me this story. He told it to my friend in my presence, and I was like, what? You built the Buffalo Bills stadium? And well, he was a structural engineer on the job. So then I went and Googled it. It used to be like this small, and then it got like way wider and taller and bigger and heavier. I'm like, Dad, how? It's 4 times bigger. How'd you do it? He's like, well, I thought they may want to expand, so I made it stronger, which is brilliant on his part. It's the oldest stadium in the NFL. It's over 50 years. They're trying to tear it down and get the taxpayers to build them a new one in upstate New York, but there's no economy there, so all the other stadiums in the NFL are newer, and they want to make more money and new revenue, but this stadium is still standing in this professional league for this multi-billion-dollar organization and team, because my dad was partially responsible for designing the structure to be strong enough with the calculus to support all the loads and torques, especially expansion on top of it. So I didn't used to like the Buffalo Bills, but now whenever I see them or that stadium on TV, I always go and try to soak it in. I wanted to take him back there to show him what he did, but his health isn't good anymore, and I don't think it's worth it to risk it. So anyway, this is where the song begins. So I talk about apocalypse for mourners, Armageddon where we are. It's kind of, this was written during the pandemic in 2020. The demo at least was. It was recorded in 2021. The video, I believe, is 2022. But I'm sure it felt like an apocalypse when there was, they had to flee their home and their country and their house. And my dad's sister died on the way, on the train platform. I have to say, this image is appropriate, kind of. They put them in this refugee camp in Calcutta, and by that I mean it was just a tent in this place where they have what's called rainy season or monsoon season, which is 100 degrees, 100% humidity in 100 days, and 24 hours of rain per day. And so they had them in this camp, which was essentially a circus tent, and they're standing in like 7 inches of water, or who knows how much of water, holding their belongings and holding their sister who's dying in their arms. And then they just took the little sister away, who would have been my youngest aunt, and she died. They took the body away because I guess they were worried about disease spreading, and they put it, I guess they burned her or something, but the family didn't get to witness the cremation or say goodbye. So it must have felt like an apocalypse, and they were mourning. But then when the pandemic came and the vaccine, which adversely affected my health, especially the second dose, which I didn't want to take, but I ended up taking because of the fact that I wanted to play in the clubs in West Hollywood on Sunset, like the Rainbow and all those places, Viper Room, Whiskey, Troubadour. They required that you show you were double vaccinated. Anyway, I had autoimmune issues, and I was probably not a good candidate, and I've never believed in vaccine science and introducing the disease into the body and hope that the person's strong enough, white blood cell wise and immune system wise, to fight off the vaccine or the whatever, to build antibodies. That's why I've never gotten a flu shot. But anyway, here we are, and so the vaccine, the the apocalypse that the people were thinking was going to happen during the pandemic and the end of the world. That's when the context of this and why it was written. So after they got married in their arranged marriage, my dad was in Buffalo designing the stadium, and his brother told him to come to India to get married, and my mom's sister arranged it with my dad's brother, and she was in Illinois getting a master's at Champaign-Urbana in nutrition, and there was a black and white photo sent and a resume, and my parents met on the day of the wedding, I guess in Calcutta somewhere. And they were married in 71 in November, and I was born June 74. But they lived in New York for a brief time, I guess when my dad was finishing designing the Buffalo Bills Stadium. And then he got a job in Philadelphia at a place called United Engineers, which since got bought out by someone like Raytheon or some monolith. In a merger or acquisition, or Lockheed Martin, one of those defense contractors. So they come to Philly. He had a job in Philly, but they lived across the river in South Jersey, where I was born, and he would commute every day on the train. Later, I would go to University of Pennsylvania, which it says right there, University 30th Street. I had a good 4 years there, being away from home. I really, really wanted to get away. And so that was before law school. So I lived in West Philly for 4 years in undergrad. And so the story continues. There's me probably 10th grade. I'm not sure, and that's my dad and mom. So, Voorhees, New Jersey, I was born and raised. Lucky my dad was able to get me to have the opportunity to grow up there. It's a pretty rich town. The Philadelphia Flyers play there, practice there, and live there. In my neighborhood growing up in Alluvium in Voorhees, off of Cooper Road, at the time these were some of the people in my neighborhood on the older section. Ron Jaworski, who was a Philadelphia Eagles quarterback starter. Bobby Jones, NBA champion, 1983 Philadelphia 76ers. Mike Schmidt, who roomed with Gary Maddox, Hall of Fame third baseman Mike Schmidt, Gold Glover, 500 home runs. Perhaps the greatest Philly of all time so far. Lived next door to my friend Devish Gandhi, who I grew up with, who was a great guy. His mom turned out to be my mom's doctor later. But they lived in this house on this street called Cedar Hill. Devish lived at 15. They lived next door. I guess it was 17 or 13. And the trees were shorter back then, the pine trees. But from Devish's mom's window, her window in the backyard, you could see Philadelphia, even though it was 20 miles or something away in spite of the trees in the hills. So that was kind of cool. So that was sort of a high point, literally, of the neighborhood. I was lucky to be raised in Voorhees. The public school system, I thought, did a decent job with me. Eastern High School was a great school. And then I went to Ivy League from there, and then law school and so forth. But all I ever wanted to do was be a musician or a residential architect or basketball player, but being short and Indian didn't help with the basketball, even though I'm a great shooter and have great range and I can pass really well and hustle and play smart, even at this age. The fact that I only touched the rim one time in my life in 10th grade at age 14 shows that, there wasn't going to be much hope unless I was 6'5". My sons are great athletes. Sohan is on the Olympic development program in soccer, and he's a sprinter, and he got both of those traits from my dad, who was good at those things in India, and I can't run fast and I can't play soccer. I can kick the ball hard and far, but that's about it. I can play almost every other sport pretty good. Ishaan is a swimmer, which I also am not good at, but my dad was. And Ishaan plays basketball, which he definitely got from me. But I was really fortunate to grow up in South Jersey, and this video is paying homage to my dad and respect to him for the opportunities he's given me to be an American born and raised. There's me playing in a basement rehearsing. I guess that would be 7.5 years ago, 2017. I love that blue Gibson guitar, Les Paul Blue Sparkle. I want to discuss this verse a bit. So this verse goes more about me, but there was jobs. My dad had an opportunity in '78 to get a job in San Diego, and he didn't take it. He had already built a house in South Jersey in Camden County. He didn't take it, and then I remember on the trip being pulled over, and we were in, I think we drove Cutlass Supreme across the country. I'm in the backseat. We got pulled over by a cop, and I was so scared, so I just played dead like a possum in the backseat. I was 4 years old. Thought I was going to jail. Turns out on the same trip, he told me later that he made a wrong turn on I-5 in San Diego after the interview and ended up in Mexico because it's like right there in Tijuana at the border. So he had to turn around. But on that same trip, I remember we went to Colorado and some kids bullied me, some family friends. I guess he knew somebody there. And I remember we were in the Rocky Mountains on I-70, and I remember that part of it. And then so he turned down a job in Denver, turned down a job in San Diego, both of which would have been great for me because they have legal weed, and that's my medicine. It helps me with everything. Passed the bar exam while smoking weed, and weed was illegal at that time because I have a photographic, audiographic, and videographic memory. I'm guessing I got this from my dad. So I hadn't studied since age 16 once I got into University of Pennsylvania. And basically I just cram. My brain takes screenshots of everything, so when I see the question, my brain sees the screenshot on where it was on the page and what it said, and then I can spit out the information. But it's also a curse. I have a lot of memories and things that I want to forget that I can't, and now I'm forgetting the good memories. So now that's why I wanted to sort of compile these memories onto video on this channel to memorialize them before they're gone. And so my sons can see some of the history and context and backstory about their father. And in this song, their grandfather too. And I get to referencing my sons later. So the song's called Double Take, Bringing Bread to Feed, in parentheses. And that part is about him going across the country, like I said, to find jobs. And in the 80s, he was designing nuclear power plants and as a civil structural engineer. And he got cancer in '89 when he was in Texas, ironically in Dallas-Fort Worth at Comanche Peak. And they flew him back to New Jersey, I guess, because I remember him crying on the phone. I was 14, and or maybe just turned 15, and he never cried before. He was very proud. The only other time I saw him cry was he found out his brother died of cancer while he was himself undergoing chemotherapy and radiation, and they lied to him. This is my uncle who set up my dad's marriage. He was the uncle I was closest to. He worked in what's called CID. It's basically, I guess, FBI or something in Calcutta. They have a show about it now on Bengali TV. And I remember sometimes we'd be in the car on the way home from the airport in India, and people would be threatening him through the car, saying that they're going to steal from my grandmother and such. But that brother died. He was my favorite brother of my dad, and I got him to quit cigarettes. It was too late, though. He died of lung cancer and pancreatic cancer. So he went from like 180 pounds to like 80 pounds in like 3 months and died. And then the pancreas is tough because it's so small, and once the cancer takes over that, there's not much time left. So my dad had colon cancer. They removed 8 feet of his colon, or basically his whole large intestine, and then reattached the small intestine to the stomach. And so he beat chemo and radiation, but while he was undergoing it, his brother had died. So they were lying to him in India about, oh, he's okay, but really they didn't want to kill my dad spirit-wise while he was undergoing chemo, because he probably would have given up. So they lied for 6 months and said, your brother's fine, your brother's fine. And then they finally told him later, so he cried then too. But this song is about going all over the country. He worked, his resume is impressive. I have to go read it again. But all these nuclear power plants all over the country. I know he's worked in Louisiana, Texas, Tennessee, New York, Pennsylvania, Delaware, New Jersey, probably every nuclear power plant that was designed during that time he had a hand in, because his company at the time, Stone & Webster, where he worked 25 years, they got a lot of those contracts. So they send my dad out for like 9 months at a time or whatever, and I'd be home alone with my mom, just growing up as a teenager and so forth. But the contracts and the contractors and everything, that all stopped in 1970. Not 1970, started around 1970. It stopped at age 70. And so this song is basically to tell about me and where my dad came from. So, bringing bread to feed, it was about him flying around the country and, you know, to support me and my mom, who worked, but she was a state government health inspector for the nutrition side. So she didn't make much, maybe like $28,000 at the end. She worked for the state for 23 years, but she was basically a dietitian. So it was my dad's money that got us through and was paying for everyone, all their families. My parents were the only children from either side of their respective families to make it to America. So they were basically rock stars in the sense that the American dollar versus the rupee. I remember in 1983 it was 7 rupees per dollar, and now it's like 82 or 87 or something. So the rupee has devalued 10 or 12 times in the last 40 years, which I remember specifically going to India and all the sisters asking my parents for money, and they'd ask for it in dollars. And then if they paid back anything, which they didn't, I'm pretty sure, they'd pay back in rupees, which were like devaluing as the dollar's getting. And so it's another source of frustration now, because my parents did all these things for these people. Now they're dying, and I'm the only one taking care of them here and helping, and they're gallivanting around their country in their houses, and multi-million-dollar houses in LA and Pennsylvania and New Jersey and India. And my uncle just messaged me that the one sister, 18 years younger than my mom, one of her houses in Mount Laurel and the other one's in LA. I don't know how she afforded that, coming at age 60 and making 30 grand a year, because you could Google it, as a government employee. Sorry I'm giving you all this background, but it's context. And so she went to India recently and sold all the houses there that my mom had bought for them. And she has power of attorney, and I asked our lawyer here about it. She's like, it's not our jurisdiction. So basically, my dad's bringing all the money, and my mom's giving it all away. And now I need that money to take care of them. I have full-time help living in the house, and that's expensive, you know, paying out of pocket, and the insurance is not covering it. So I also, during the recession, this is where it starts talking about me, the song does, is I left Texas in 2008 because her dad said I didn't make enough money as a federal attorney. So he's like, go to the private sector. At the time, it was a recession, if people recall, 2008. And there was no jobs I could find in Dallas as a lawyer at the time. But I found a federal income tax job in Los Angeles on Hollywood Boulevard at 7080 Hollywood Boulevard. And my older son was already born. My younger son was on the way, so I had to make money. So I took the job. I was flying every Monday and Friday back and forth from LA to Texas. And I was doing that because I had to maintain the health insurance for Ishaan, who was in the womb, in utero. And it was Blue Cross Blue Shield. It was like $1,100 a month. So I had to make sure that we had the best health insurance because I didn't want to compromise or risk his health and the pregnancy and the birth. So I was flying all around, and then across the street I had a 4th floor corner office. That building is still there, 7080 Hollywood Boulevard. 3 doors down was Jimmy Kimmel. The theater where they do the Oscars was on the corner of Hollywood and Highland. Right across the street was the Chinese theater, the famous one. So I was there for a while till that company folded, and Ishaan was still on the way. And so I was scrambling to find a job, and I found a job in Denver, and a similar field, tax law. And so then I was commuting from Denver, or Westminster was where I was working, halfway to Boulder, from Denver, and back to Dallas, this whole Monday to Friday thing. And Ishaan was born that December. Sohan was born December 2 years before that. There was another brother, Stefan, who was miscarried, but he would have been due the December before that, 2005. So I was trying to, pay all the bills. Also had a nanny I was paying for. Real nice Mexican lady named Claudia Hernandez. They called her Tia, like auntie. And so she was there to help. But I was flying around trying to do this law thing. And then that company also filed for bankruptcy. So then I came home and opened up a private tax practice in her father's office. Actually, he's a CPA or CFP, or was. And his initial goal was to hand off the business to his daughter, my former spouse. She was an accounting major, but she really was not good at math. To be honest, she couldn't even do a 20% tip on a bill at a restaurant without asking me to calculate it. So he knew that wouldn't work. So he tried me to get to, like tax law, and he kept pushing me to tax law. And I actually enrolled at Southern Methodist University in the LLM taxation program, which is like, the law degree is a doctorate. My degree says Juris Doctorate, so I have a JD, I'm a doctorate of the law. And then the LLM is above that. That's like a postdoctorate degree. But I didn't want to do it, so I never finished because I was hating just being there, and I was depressed, and I hated law, and I hated Texas. And there's a lot of reasons for that that are listed in these songs and that I'll discuss. But so then I opened a practice in his office, and to save money and on overhead, he had an extra office in his practice, so I was literally in my father-in-law's office, and that was not fun. Bringing bread to feed. So there's train stations, Oak Ridge Mountain Range, trained into PA, Brown Cat in Philly. So I'm geographically, lyrically going through in this verse some of the places that he worked and I worked. Ironically, I worked in LA and Denver on the 2 jobs that he declined in the 70s, would have been Southern California and Denver, which would have helped me as far as mountains and nature and music and medicinal marijuana. It's Camden, New Jersey, Philadelphia. There's Denver, New Orleans. So I talk about in this pre-chorus, or what chorus, whatever this section is like, my last day, wake and bake, missed you grow, heaven's sake, took my dough, and then goes on to say double take. So I want them to look again at what I've been painted as and what the reality was, even about my dad, you know, and what they've said about him. I'm sure, knowing her uncle and her dad, and the vitriol and everything they were saying for years while I was officially with her 16 years. So married for 8 officially, and so there's a lot of history there that's not been told, and that's the purpose of these songs. And in case I can't say all this stuff in person, if I'm not around anymore, that's what this channel is for. So yeah, I have to say marijuana has helped me get through everything, through the bar exam, through Dallas, through my jobs, through depression, through anxiety, through the loss of so many things. And yeah, I have eye problems, that severe glaucoma and autoimmune issues that it helps with. Helps my appetite. It helps as a muscle relaxer for my back problem. Yeah, so and it was illegal the whole time in Texas, and I was getting it from, basically her cousin had a friend in Austin whose brother lived in Dallas. So I was getting the weed basically through Eshna and her brother and cousin, through that connection, because I was a stranger in a strange land when I gave up my California dream to live there. I was a Philadelphia Eagles fan, and Cowboys territory was hell. And I didn't have any friends there. All my friends were her friends, couple friends. Wasn't allowed to play football with her brother, wasn't allowed to play golf with her cousins. She got mad when it took 5 hours to play golf because the people ahead of us were slow. She got mad when I took 2.5 hours to play football with her brother. So I just felt like I was trapped, and if I wanted to live, I had to leave, or else I would have died. In the last year, I lost 50 pounds in 50 weeks. And then I encountered Clay Stockton, one of her boyfriends, at the gym, which is described in another song and another video. And then I left. And that was over 13 years ago. That's Camden, New Jersey, overlooking Philadelphia, the Delaware River. I worked in the courthouse there. I went to law school there. I was supposed to go to law school in California, but my parents said, you got to stay home, because my dad got, he had triple bypass surgery in '95. And I was the only child. Mom's like, you're not going to Malibu for law school. So I would have been overlooking the Pacific Ocean, and marijuana would have been there, but instead I had to stay in Camden. It's an Indian thing, this take care of your parents, don't put them in a nursing home, this obligation, this guilt they put on you, and my parents laid it on extra thick. I believe that's New York, but it could be that train station in Philly, 30th Street Station. So a lot of these images are tied into the lyrics. My dad didn't let me be an architect. He said there's no jobs for architects. He was right at the time. There's this engineering program and also architecture program called CAD, computer aided design. So it eliminated, because he worked in this company that designed all these things, all the guys with the drawing boards and the T-squares and the triangles and the protractors that I loved. I loved drawing. I would sit there and design houses, you know, before I was a teenager, like exact floor plans to scale, and that was fun for me. He said, no, our company's laid off 29 out of the 30 architects. They kept one guy who knew how to use the software program. So it would have been hard, but at least I would have enjoyed my job. The only other things I liked were playing basketball and music. So now music is all that remains, since I can't go to school full-time 5 years for residential architecture at this point. That is interesting. My mom and dad's family came in '79, and they stayed in our house, my grandparents, my aunts who now live here, my mom's sisters, and the one husband. And we walked. My grandmother was probably like 83 at the time, and she's all hunched over, and she might have had a cane, I doubt it, but she just hunched. And we walked all the way up the stairs, and I was 5 years old, and my dad and me and my grandmother, and so my dad was probably like 45, 44, and we went all the way to the top, to the crown. And I don't know if they let people do that anymore structurally and after 9/11, but you could look out the crown, and I remember that view. I remember my grandmother walking all the way, and it was so hot in there, if you can imagine being in that steel structure or whatever it is, baking in the summer. They used to let people go up to the arm and the torch, which, if you look at it from a physics standpoint, and it's kind of iffy with all that weight, and then, you know, the corrosion, and then the angle and gravity. And so that was my dad's job, actually, to make sure something like that could withhold. But in the old days, they used to let people go all the way up to the top, to the torch, which was interesting. So when I see this, I always think of my dad's mom, who died at 104. You can really hear the snare drum popping from Mike Bordin of Faith No More. I've heard so many versions of Faith No More playing live, and their studio albums, that I really know the sound. And a music nerd like me, like other people in their favorite bands, musicians, they know the signature sound. Like when Slash plays, you know it's Slash, or when Nuno's playing, you know it's Nuno, or when it's Neil Peart, you know it's Neil Peart, or Jimmy Page, or John Bonham. But I guess you just got to be a crazy music fan like me to be into this stuff. Also, Billy Gould's bass has that signature attack, especially on that low string that you hear. Matt was commenting on that, the producer as well, that he has that one note. And so I'm thankful to Matt, and also to Maor Appelbaum for mastering this song and this album. Matt did a great job with the mix and the production, and bringing all these industry luminaries together to help me get the message out to my sons. My father and mother haven't really seen any of these songs, or don't understand, and can barely hear, and don't really care. So this is not for them, but I felt like I had to say, you know, the good things about my dad that I do respect that he did for me, giving me the opportunity to be born here. So, yeah, I'm not shameful about marijuana, because I've been on depression medication. For 2 years I didn't smoke, and I was on depression medication for the 2 years when I left Texas. And all I did was gain weight. I had gained 40 pounds of water. I was like 200 pounds, and I was like, I can't do this. So I stopped completely, and then went back to the weed, and that's the only thing that's helped me with anything. Helps me sleep, helps me with appetite, helps me relax. Sort of an equalizer on if normal is here and I'm always here depressed, it brings me up to the right level, and then if I'm amped up or whatever, it brings me down. So it's like a balancer for me. That was me playing in Ventura, California. My blue Gibson, I love that guitar. And there's a Fender tube amp for you tech nerds out there. So this actress or actor is, she keeps coming back in the videos as a recurring character. She represents someone in the story. I'm pretty sure you can figure out who. There's a lot of different scenes with her, either putting on makeup or at the bathroom or looking in the mirror. But then there's other characters and other symbols like of temptation. There's like other girls like dancing and like almost like trying to lure you. So the last 10 years, you know, playing in LA and San Francisco and Philly or wherever, I've had a lot of opportunities to meet people, and I haven't really taken anyone up on any of their offers as far as a partner in a long-term sort of committed relationship, because partially when I left Texas, I always wanted my sons to know that I never got with anyone else, and I never had more kids, and I never picked someone else over them, and that the reason I'm gone is because of her and her father and her brother, and a lot of details that I can't go into right now here, but if they ask me, I'll tell them. And basically they took all my stuff, and that's what the song is about. Took my dough, and then took my kids and my dogs and my credit, my name, my reputation, my happiness. Moved in the boss who's 70 and she's 43. My kids need to know that you shouldn't sleep with the boss, and then you shouldn't make them the step parent of your children, and then treat their father the way you do. That's what that is. So the dream was to die in California and Los Angeles. There's a lot of travel motifs in these songs: planes, trains, cars. I'm all, crisscrossing the country, driving through the desert, going back and forth from New Jersey to take care of my parents, to go back to LA to record with the band and to play live shows with my friends out there. So basically, since Texas, I've been back and forth from California. I had an apartment on the other side of that hill, down there. That's Burbank over there. It's Avalon now, but it used to be called Oakwood. And Universal Studios is right there. Warner Brothers is right there, where they have across the street in the traffic light at the bottom of the hill on the other side. That's Barham Boulevard. It's the exit off the 101. I think it's exit 11. And it sounds like Bordin, so I used to think it was appropriate. So I lived there 3 different times in that complex. Even when I worked as an attorney in Hollywood, I was living there the first time. And then 2 other times after I left Texas. And it's a great location. There was an amphitheater right there, and they tore it down and put the Harry Potter castle at Universal. I played at Universal at City Walk, jamming 10 years ago. That's where I sort of started the live thing. This place has a lot of memories for me. Basically, I was right there in the middle of everything, and the bands, even Faith No More, was housed in my apartment complex. I saw on YouTube Nirvana, Guns N' Roses, Metallica were all housed there because they were recording across the street at Warner Brothers during all their big albums. So I felt a kinship there. I have a lot of good memories there in Southern California. So. And there's India, where my dad came from, and look at that. It's chaos. There's like cows, there's like people, but like, how does anyone get anywhere? It's just entropy. And so anyone to make it out of there with 1.5 billion people there, and 1.5 next door in China, that's 3 billion, which is 1/3 of the world's population right there in those two countries. So that's why America and other countries can outsource their jobs like call centers to India and China to get these workers to work for cheap, because the dollar is worth 82 rupees when it used to be worth 7 rupees. And so everyone's poor. You can see the poverty on their faces. And anyone who gets out of India or China to come here to build a better life, that's what this song is about, that my dad did for me, because thank heaven for that, or else I'd have been there. And who knows, nothing would have happened in my life except, well, nothing good, let's say that. So he made it here, and I'm thankful for that. And because of him making it here, my sons are here, and I wanted to know that, them to know that. And so this is to pay respect to him now that he's pretty close to the end. But yeah. This song is the riff. I played it on the demo, and when I wrote the music and played it for the guys to learn the parts. Michael Ward, who passed away from diabetes and other complications recently, played all the rhythm guitars on the album and some of the solos, and he really liked this riff that I came up with, the da-na-na, da-na-na. And for him to even say that, I thought was cool, because here is this guy who sold millions of albums, toured with the Wallflowers, opened for the Rolling Stones, played Dodger Stadium, you know, has pictures with Robert Plant, like all these things, like met all these famous people, and then he's telling me my little grungy 3-note riff or 3-chord riff was cool. So that was nice of him. He also took another song, I think it was or 2 other songs, where he totally changed the intro, solo, and arrangement I had given him, and I didn't even recognize the song. When I heard it, when Matt played it back for me initially, when he sent me the rough mixes. And then Michael Ward wanted to friend request me on Facebook, and Matt messaged me, and he's like, hey, Mike wants to be your Facebook friend. I was like, sure. And he's like, he's really proud of what he did on these songs. And then he posted a couple videos on his page of like him playing the solos in Matt's studio, where I recorded Studio Deluxe, where the Faith No More album was mixed, the last one. And right across the street is the famous studio where Dave Grohl and Sound City, right across the parking lot, actually. Every time I'd park my car, there was this studio which made all the best albums of the 70s and the hits. So I felt very lucky to be there, but I'm very lucky that Michael Ward, you know, enjoyed these songs. And he actually left behind 2 sons, and he was estranged from them. So he took, I'm sure he took some solace in the songs. At the end of his life, he was in Plano, Texas, where my sons are, where my house is, where she moved in, the boss, and made him stepdad. And he was trying to reach his son, and he was in a hotel, and he was posting on Facebook. And I was like, hey, Mike, you know those songs are about my sons. You know they're in Plano, Texas, right? He's like, I know, man, I know. And I said, call me. And he's like, I know, man. And then the call never came. I knew it wouldn't come. But may he rest in peace. So this is supposed to represent all, you know, all the places I've played and the people I've played with and the music and the scene at night. And like the Indian reference here, even though these are Caucasian people dressed as Indians at some wedding, probably their girlfriend's wedding, the bridesmaids, and but just basically what life has been like, what life was. And also, so I was flying around the country to bring bread to feed, and they don't know that, and this is so my sons know. That's me and Sohan. You can see the shape of his eyes and his nose and his eyebrows, his eyelashes. My hair looked just like that when I was little. My dad can't tell us apart if you show, either can my mom really. I showed her yesterday some pictures of us at parallel ages, and so I call him my doppelganger. Ishaan also has my long eyelashes and eye shape and eyebrows. But anyway, thank you for listening. There's more songs explicating the history and context of all of this stuff in my story in Texas and so forth. Other songs on this album, all dedicated for my sons to know what happened. But thank you for listening. Thank you for your support. And if you can, please share, like, or subscribe, or comment. That would help get the message out to them. I miss you, Sohan and Ishaan. Hope to see you soon.